everyone. I'm Charna Davis-Wiese, and welcome to UCF in Print. Okay, so you're in a movie theater and you're totally lost in the film. You forget you're in the local cinema because you're so drawn in and involved. Great acting? Probably. Beautiful scenery? Maybe. But without the screenplay, without the words, and the focus and the direction of where the film is going, there is no magic at all. Join me in welcoming Barry Sandler from the UCF Film Department, but also a very noted and famous screenwriter who we get to borrow from Hollywood for some of the year, the majority of the year.
Majority, yes, absolutely.
We'll get to that. I'm going to find out how we were lucky enough to get you here. But first I want to talk about,
Well, first I want to thank you for that introduction, because most people don't acknowledge the importance of the screenplay and the screenwriter. So.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The words, and what do we do when we really love a movie? Yeah. Do you remember what so-and-so looked like? You quote the lines.
Of course, and a lot of people think the actors make up the lines, as they go along, but
I've seen them on award shows. I know they don't. They don't. Let's talk about becoming a screenwriter. Right. I like to do that all the time on the show. I love finding somebody's journey. So did little Barry Sandler know that big Barry Sandler was going to be a famous screenwriter?
In truth, yes. It was something I wanted to do from the time I was a kid. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and was just totally fascinated and obsessed with movies. Those were, whether it was an escape, whether it was just a means of, seeing, the images on the screen that just, totally captivated me. Whatever the dynamic was that drew me in, I was there. And I would just go to movie after movie after movie. When I was too young to go myself, I'd drag my parents, and they would take me to everything. They were very liberal in that regard, in terms of there was nothing that they would withhold from me. So I got to see everything as a kid. With foreign films, and it was before the rating system, but films that were considered very adult.
We have that in common, because I told you my single mom did that. I saw R-rated movies when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old.
It gives you a tremendous education. It gives you a whole insight into the human condition that
and it didn't cause me to do anything or be any different than any other kid either.
Right.
I was probably shyer than the average kid too.
There you go. Great. So it was clearly something I wanted to do, and I wasn't, I didn't want to act, and I just, my proclivity was toward writing also in school. I would love to write short stories. So the natural progression would be to write movies. So I decided very early on that I was going to go to college, but I wanted to go out to Los Angeles and go to either UCLA or USC. And learn film. And at that point, there were very few film schools in the country. There were just the two in LA and NYU, Columbia, one or two others. And I was very much drawn toward Los Angeles, Hollywood, if you would. And my parents were a little bit reluctant to send me all the way out there, but
really different world from Buffalo.
Yeah, it really was. But I really, had that drive and that passion, and they understood it and finally gave in. And I was accepted at both schools actually, and ended up at UCLA and had a great experience at UCLA as an undergrad and a grad, and went to film school and then got a MFA in the film department. And how I actually got into the professional world of screenwriting, well, it's an interesting story. When I was in college, I had gone with some friends of mine. I was in a fraternity. I went with some fraternity brothers down to the Olympic Auditorium in LA and saw a roller derby game. Now at this point, it was in the 70s, and roller derby was kind of a very much of a West Coast phenomenon, very much of a kind of seedy subculture. But I'd never seen it before, coming from Buffalo, and I had no idea what it was. But I looked at it and I thought, what a great backdrop for a movie. Nothing had ever been done in that regard. And I thought it's a great concept for a film. And I thought, this would be, a terrific subject, and it would possibly be something that might get made and might people might go see, because if they were as fascinated by it as I was. And I went back and I wrote the screenplay, and I envisioned the protagonist as the female heroine, a female roller derby skater, and I had envisioned Raquel Welch. who at that time in the early 70s was, pretty much the biggest star in Hollywood, or one of the 2 or 3. And I thought, I'm envisioning this script with her in mind, and wrote the script, and I said, okay, how do I get it to her? So I got one of these maps to the star's homes, and her house was on it. And I took the script and I found out, charted the path up to her house, and I got up to her house and I rang the doorbell.
Oh my goodness
And
gracious.
I mean, you have to do this,
It's
I
a
guess,
word
to
called
break in.
chutzpah.
Yeah, it was kind of a brash thing to do, but I was like a 19-year-old kid at the time, and I thought, it's do or die. I mean,
The entertainment industry, even from TV news to the movie, you have to do that.
Yeah, you do.
have to do that.
So her secretary answered the door, her assistant, and I said, I'm a UCLA film student. I've written a script for Raquel, and I think she'd be great in it. And she was kind of taken aback, but she read it, gave it to Raquel, and the movie was made, Kansas City Bomber.
I never knew the story behind it.
Yeah. So now I wouldn't advise that today. I mean,
today couldn't get by the guard dogs.
I think it's this was the kind of the pre-stalker era, but it was just a way of breaking in. You want to know how I broke in? So that's basically the story.
That's
that got me
amazing.
in. And then once that happened, I was still in college at the time, but once I got out and I had that credit, it was a little bit easier to.
Once you get on the beach, it's easier to stay on the beach.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
It is true.
Right.
And in those days, it was not the kind of thing that you thought it could actually be so accessible. How do you grow up and be a screenwriter? My nephew went out, I don't remember what he majored in school, but he decided he was going to go to New York and he was going to become an actor.
Yeah.
And he tried for 4 years, and he got an agent right away, and he had the right look, and he did all this stuff in college. And when he came back, he's actually in residency, he's going to be a doctor now. He said, what people don't understand is that the people who make it, the actors, the screenwriters, they have studied in the best schools. They are trained to do this. You're not discovered at an ice cream shop. They have a real educational background in being a screenwriter, and being in film, and being.
Well, it's important because as an actor and a writer and a director as well, you need that foundation. You need that world of experience and education and just a knowledge of the world around you to gain a foundation, to gain a perspective, to gain a worldview, to gain an insight into the human condition. And the creativity is a separate entity. I mean, but you use your foundation of knowledge of the world, of politics, of sociology, of the humanities, and you use that as a foundation. Then you take your creativity, but you've got to root it somewhere. You've got to base it. It's got to come out of some insight gained from a college education, I would think.
I always tell my kids, because they're little, and the biggest one's 13 now, but when they plan teams or whatever, I always make them read the biography of Michael Jordan, because kids know him, and how he didn't make his first team. He had the talent, but he had to work harder. Everybody I've known who's ever, in the sports field, he said he worked harder than anybody.
Yeah, sure.
So it's not only the natural talent. You got to work hard.
You do. Oh, absolutely, you got to work hard. Sure.
So you had this movie. You had so many movies. You want me to read some of them? We've got The Loners, The Duchess and the Dirtwater Fox, Gable and Lombard, The Mirror Cracked. Then came the one that you probably questioned about more than anything else, which is Making Love,
right,
which was the first actual mainstream movie about real-life situation of a man realizing he's gay.
Right.
Was that scary at that time? I told you about my background, and to me, people are people no matter what, and that's how we were raised, and finding people who would judge people or hurt their careers because of their sexual orientation or religion or race was so foreign to me. Unfortunately, that probably was an issue. People probably said to you, maybe you don't want to do this at that time.
Everybody said that to me. Yeah. But the more people said don't do it, the more obviously I was motivated to do it.
Was it just that same chutzpah, or did you think the time was right, or both?
It was a point in my life that I was looking to explore deeper regions as a writer. And I had written a number of the films you mentioned, which were kind of big Hollywood uh, glamorous entertainment kinds of, with big stars, with Elizabeth Taylor and Goldie Hawn.
It was a dream job. It was a dream career.
Oh yeah, well, I had a good time doing it,
Yeah.
and I was fortunate in getting these films made, but I was at a point where I thought, I wanted to. I was just about, late 20s, just about close to turning 30, and I felt I wanted to go into more personal issues, more deeper, more complex
More grown
areas. Yeah, more grown up, exactly. And I was involved with someone at the time who was really instrumental in pushing me into exploring these areas. And it was challenging. I mean, it was something that I thought, well, there's never been a film done. There have been a lot of
Darker films.
Well, films that dealt with homosexuals as objects of ridicule, or as the villain, or as the suicide.
These terrible lives.
Very negative stereotyping. Very
and this
negative
was a
imagery.
real film. It
And
was
to
really
make
happening.
a film where we actually showed a positive image of gay men. We showed a film that said, well, a man can come to terms with his sexuality and still live a gratifying life. Had never been done before. So it was a challenge, and it was a bit intimidating. But if you're going to grow as a writer and as a human being, you have to be willing to take those chances. You have to be willing to take those risks and explore those areas that might seem daunting. And I have to say that the film got made because we had a female head of production at 20th Century Fox, Sherry Lansing, who wanted to make this groundbreaking film. And
she got it.
She did. She got it, and she was a pioneer. And I have to say that I think it took a female head of production to greenlight this film and say we want to make it.
Probably true. We'll be right back. We'll talk more with Barry Sandler when we come back. Welcome back to UCF in Print. We're talking with Barry Sandler, who is a major force in Hollywood, a screenwriter, and we're talking about his groundbreaking movie that he wrote, Making Love. Now, I also read that it was difficult to cast because at that time, some actors were told, maybe this isn't a good idea for you.
It was very hard to cast. We had approached a number of major stars who, some of them just flat out said, no, I'm not going to do it. Others were tempted to do it. They were kind of intrigued by the prospect, but in the end just didn't have the, I don't want to say guts, but I think they just felt, it wasn't for them.
For people who didn't see the movie is about a happily married man. He was a doctor. And he becomes attracted to another man, and he realizes that his feelings are more than just friendly, that he's probably
Well, he's repressed
gay.
it. I mean, he's had these feelings most of his life, but
he decides that this is the way I am.
Yeah, and finally, it's a point in his life where he has to, face the truth, really.
And it's really, in a way, it's probably threatening in that it's so real.
Well, it's
really real, not like the other stuff that wasn't.
It speaks to the fact that we just have to come to terms with who we are and be honest with ourselves, whether it's in terms of the gay issue or any issue, which is a theme that I've dealt with in other films as well. I mean, the film I did after the Making Love was in a much darker, more twisted
Crimes of Passion.
Crimes of Passion, yeah. But that also dealt with similar themes about coming to terms with the honesty of who you are, of your sexuality and your sensibility and your just your basic humanity. And it's a theme that I've explored in several films.
Fast forward to the present.
Yes.
Brokeback Mountain, huge hit.
But I didn't write that.
loved it. You didn't write that.
I did not
but
write
you
that.
were asked a lot about it.
I was asked a lot.
But the difference between you breaking through then and the acceptance that it got, huge. It's huge.
Well, it's been a lot of years in between, and Charna, what I think you can attribute that to is the proliferation of gay images on television. I think the Will and Grace and 6 Feet Under and just any weekly show that uses a gay character, the audiences today are more conditioned to the visibility is higher, so we're more accepting of the fact that gay people exist.
And plus, when you watch them, they become, they're for your friends. You really understand them. You get to know them, and it probably breaks down a barrier in that. Oh yeah, Will's.
It does.
I understand.
It totally destigmatizes the whole concept of it.
But you were mentioning that in the interviews because everybody wanted to talk to you. It seems when I read things on you, everybody interviewed you when Brokeback Mountain came out.
Yes.
That you mentioned that the endings were very stark, a stark difference between the Brokeback Mountain ending and the Making Love ending.
Yes, yes. In Brokeback, one of the characters is killed, and the other ends up very much alone and regretful. And in Making Love, the character ends up very happy and very much in control of his destiny and a better man for having come to terms with who he is. So it's a total disparity in terms of where the characters, the protagonists ended up. Yes.
And you thought that maybe some of the journalists who had interviewed you thought that maybe the Making Love was more threatening because it turned out. Right. It turned out with a happy ending.
Yes, it's possible. I don't know. It came out in a different era as well.
Right.
It came out of a very conservative era, and being the first, I think a lot of people were threatened by it, or intimidated by it, or just uncomfortable with it.
Right. Do you think things have changed? Is it superficial, or do you think things have really changed?
I think things have changed. I notice in the college generation today. Students are much cooler about it. They're much more accepting about issues that, when we were in college, were very forbidden, to even talk about it, So, the world has changed, and I think that's very representative in terms of the college generation today, which is, great to see.
So what are you working on now?
Well, I had a film on a couple years ago on the Warren's Television on TBS called Evil Never Dies with Katherine Heigl from Grey's Anatomy. That was my.
I love her.
She's in a film coming up called Knocked Up that's opening in a couple weeks. I hear good things about. That was the most recent thing I've done. I've got a couple scripts in development at the moment. I'm heading back to LA in a couple weeks to work on those, and I'm teaching and loving it. I'm having a great time.
Well, as you teach, when you teach these students, are you inspired by the teachers you had when you were in college? Is it a whole new world? The technology is so different.
I'm more inspired by the students that
Are
I
you?
have now than I am by the teachers I had then. I mean, I think the energy and the enthusiasm and the just the excitement that is generated by the students who love film, who know film, who are extremely talented. I mean, the talent at UCF Film School is just extraordinary. I'm just amazed and thrilled by it.
I found that in the digital media department as well. It's like, these kids are amazing. They're really just kids.
They are,
like you were.
But they know film and they understand it and love it.
Work very hard at it.
Yeah. Oh, extremely.
How did we get you here from LA, from Buffalo to LA to Orlando?
Well, I had been teaching off and on over the years. I would teach at UCLA. I did some guest lecturing at SC. I taught for a semester at Antioch, and I loved teaching. And I was just getting to a point in my life where I had been writing in a lot of films and was feeling a little bit isolated and very much looking for a new adventure and for a new direction. And somebody told me about UCF. They were looking for somebody to come in and teach screenwriting. And I thought, well, I'll check it out. I'll apply. And sure enough,
I can't imagine what they thought when they saw your application.
Well,
we get so lucky.
I thought, this looks like be a great adventure, a great experience, and I thought I'd try it for a year and see. And I, kept my place in LA, and I thought, well, I'll give it a year here and see what it's like. And I've been here. This is my third year, and I'm loving it. And I'm thinking, I'm having a better time teaching than I ever had writing. But obviously I'm still writing.
You can still do that. You can do that from here, and then as you go back to LA when you.
But I think what is the most exciting aspect of it are the students and the passion that they have for film, which kind of reignites our own passion, and that's what's keeping me here.
As a screenwriter then and a screenwriter now,
right.
the incredible technology that's available, does that make it easier or does that make it more difficult?
Well, all the technology in the world you still need a great story. You still need characters that an audience is going to connect with and empathize with and follow on the journey.
Is it easier for you to write about things that you couldn't have? It would have been too expensive to film before.
Well, that's yes. You look at the wonders of CGI and the technology of filmmaking. You can do those kinds of action sequences, crowd scenes that obviously you couldn't do. But you still need the basic foundation of story and character that is going to connect an audience to the story on the screen. And that, I think, is something that hasn't changed. I mean, the technology has changed, but the basic concept of characters and story remain the same. The ways of telling the story, obviously, are more sophisticated. But without a story to tell, and all there is technology, it's not going to work.
Do you have a favorite line from a movie?
From any movie?
From any.
No.
Do you have one that you really think about?
Well, I have a couple, but I can't say it on a family show.
You can't say that?
No. A couple from Crimes of Passion. You can check out the DVD. And,
how about it when you were a film buff as a child? What was your favorite movie? Did you have a favorite one?
I did. My favorite movie remains to this day is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Really?
So when I saw it as a teenager, it kind of overwhelmed me. And I'm going to be teaching that film. I actually have shown it in a couple of classes. And one of the things, not only with Virginia Woolf, but other films that I grew up with loving, that I show to students, films like Cool Hand Luke or Manchurian Candidate or The Verdict, and you see the students respond in ways that that I did when I saw it originally as a student, and that they're taking away from the film things that I took away from, and they're able to, you can generate that kind of reaction in them. It's very gratifying as a teacher to be able to, expose a new generation to films from the past. Because frankly, there aren't that many films out there today that we can study as, or that they'll be studying 20 years from now in film school.
Right. What about the first time you see the premiere, your first time you see the finished film, and it's your words?
It's a conflicting experience.
A mixed bag.
Because it's I've never been totally happy with any film of mine, because obviously I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I'm saying, well, I wish he or she had said that line a different way, or I wish I had written it a different way. I'm very self-critical also. I think, why didn't I say this instead of this? Why didn't I write that? But if I can try to back away and look at it as a whole, but it's hard. I mean, it's hard. Certainly, I'm a little more hard on myself than probably I need to be. But in terms of seeing it for the first time, it's an overwhelming experience, because you're seeing your work up there on the screen with great actors. Yeah, when you're seeing actors like Christopher Walken or Tony Perkins or Angela Lansbury, Elizabeth Taylor saying these lines that you wrote, it's terrific. It's just great. Yeah.
Barry Sandler, thank you so much for joining us. I really think that when you thought it would be very cool to come here to teach students, I think it was really a very lucky thing for them.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
And thank you so much. I hope you come back. Next time you're back from LA, we'll talk some more. We'll talk about your new projects.
Great.
That'll be great.
Thank you.
I'm Charna Davis-Wiese. Thank you for joining us, and join us again next time on UCF in Print.